Even my alleged ugly children are beautiful. The allegedly ugly. Um, Now, first of all, I don't know um, why. Why bother calling any of my children ugly when clearly they're not? And then, furthermore, um, as for the ones that you guys would say, she's not all that, I find it bewildering because she made some of the most gorgeous women that there is. So, just because you look like whatever on the outside, like, and I'm not saying that, like I have eyes, obviously. I know what I find attractive or what people mean when they're like ugly or pretty or whatever. But when you think about it correctly, it shouldn't matter because, again, some of that which you deem to be ugly, which is not, they ended up having some of the most gorgeous children. Would you believe that? In my crossover bloodline, because of the nonchalant practices of unconsequenced crimes, um, something that happens, it's a pattern that happens, whereas there's sisters usually, and the younger one is usually prettier than the older one. The older one is pretty, yes. However, she's more so got that, she has the personality that outshines the younger one. The younger one has a tendency, not saying that they're a bad person, but has a tendency to be more so on the shallow side, or more so like the, what could I call that? Yeah, they're like the surf, very gorgeous. The younger ones are usually always the prettier sister, but they're both very beautiful for sure. But you can tell the difference between the two of them. Like if you were to put them in the room together, you'd be like, okay, obviously that's the prettier sister. If you were to separate them, the sister who I'm saying maybe allegedly is less pretty, she would still be deemed gorgeous. Like, but when you put them together, then you can see it for yourself. But it's the prettier one who has a tendency to, what do we call that, be the, not just the devil's advocate, but more so interested in toxic, dysfunctional relationships, whereas the older one is wanting something that's more so real. And she does. Usually it's the older one, and that's the pattern that I've seen. It's the older one that has the tendency to be more spiritually rich. It's just something that I notice. Like they're more in depth. So even though they might not be prettier than their younger sister, not that it should even matter, it shouldn't. But another thing that crosses my mind is there's this dude who told me that not everybody can be beautiful. How are you going to say these things? Not everyone can be beautiful. Everyone clearly could be beautiful. But the reason why beauty is not allowed to be the flourishing factor is because people have a unwillingness to work with compatibility. They have an unwillingness to work with what works. They're unwilling to go with the flow of things that actually are effective because they want their way so desperately, and they're willing to undermine the ingenuity of what people would consider to be eugenics. There's nothing wrong with eugenics if it's applied from a mature mental state, not from a exploitative state of mind. You have to be able to see it from the point of view of benefiting your own self future wise. So your children, you want your children to have and to be created from a place of wholesomeness and what works. Like, sure, we have unfortunately we have defects that are not even, they're not organic defects. These are defects that are coming from the onslaught of immature and reprobate nuances that have been administered by very intelligent, crafty individuals, but nonetheless, it's toddler like, it's childish, and it's reprobate, it's degenerative. Ultimately, because it's coming from a place of ego, pride, and competition. Um, Humanity as a whole um, has not gotten to a place of comprehending how to have respect for the womb and what they're doing. I don't know if they're doing this on purpose. It's very confusing because it's unnecessary. If you have a problem with the future, just remove yourself from the present, because when you're attacking or when you're physically abusing and doing all of these negative things, all you're doing is ruining your future body. So when you're doing that, or, I guess targeting somebody or somebody that you consider to be weak and a target, vulnerable, naive, and whatever, it's like you're just ruining yourself. Yeah, we can feel it, sure, when you're doing it to us, but ultimately you are destroying your future and your body for the future. You're doing that as well, because you have to be able to see women from the lens of a multi-dimensional being of one. And that's why we get these problems, or we can see these problems on the other side of the fence with males, because we're seeing a multi-dimension, we're seeing the different sides. If you want to say the different sides of the moon, sure, you could say something like that. You're getting the different dimensions and figures of one singular. And then when these parts are broken apart, because literally, um, in some cases, you do want to separate from the one body, and not understanding this and not having reverence for this is what is the troubles, because of this um, overload of entitlement, of which has been offensive to the woman, and it's been offensive to men, I'm sure, if they're being realistic about it. um, but if you sit there and you go, why would you why would you ruin your own body? You're ruining your own body. If you don't want to be in the future, and you're assumedly going against someone else, or using your body's strength and energy to defile or ruin, or ultimately, I don't know, to get rid of somebody else, you're doing that to yourself, technically, which is fine in some cases. That's fine. You have to see it from one body. So then when you have two bodies that fit together, they become one body. How do these things happen to whereas you don't know you don't know the difference between what is ugly and what's beautiful? Because if you think that somebody else is ugly, what makes them ugly? That's because a violation likely happened. That was a disorganized and unplanned. It was not what was the reason behind the creating of such and such human being, because people are not being created with a mindset of respect for the future. They're coming from a place of now. What do I want now? And what can I see now? And how can I profit now? They're not thinking about what is ahead, if there is anything ahead, because they don't care. They think that by denying someone else, which is a reflection of themselves, they think that by denying someone else a future, that they're guaranteed to have a future, when the reality is there will be no future when you're doing that to your own self.